Hey guys, Grumpy here with a very quick update to the build guide that I posted yesterday. Wanted to make this as a follow-up based on the feedback that I received. Got a lot of really great suggestions and wanted to show the changes that I made. So starting off with the tree, first thing we did was we dropped the mana cluster because it cost too much. The way we solve that or get some of it back is grabbing Deep Thoughts and then the Mana Mastery. We get 12% there, which doesn't make up all of it, but it makes up some of it. Moving down here, we grab Brutal Restraint, specifically with the Traitor. What this is going to allow us to do is get 100% uptime on our flask, regardless of what's going on. Our flask will just always be ready. The way we do that is we make sure that we get these two notables with increased flash charges gained. The way we find that is we use the find timeless jewel, search with based on this criteria, then filter nodes so it just searches that those two, the ones we have allocated. Grab what is it? Add flash charges here, and then just run search. And what it'll do is it'll pull up all of the jewels that match that criteria. You just double click it, it'll add it to the tree. If you want to search all these jewels on trade, you copy trade URL and then just drop it in the bar at the top, and it'll run a filter for all these jewels for you, and then you just buy whatever's the cheapest one. And the last thing I want to call out on the tree is until you're ready to go 100% spell suppress, you can drop this cluster and pick up Whispers of Doom. When you pick up Whispers of Doom, it'll allow you to cast Punishment, which is really going to brutalize those bosses, which we'll talk about when we show it off. But it'll brutalize those bosses once they hit low life. But that's the tree. Those are the changes. I believe I had Bone Barrier before, but we actually switched over to Plague Bringer. It just ended up being more DPS and gave us a higher EHP. So that's why we went with that. Moving on to the skills, we swap out our Golem for Wall Summon Skeletons. The reason we're doing this is because we just get more DPS out of our skeletons, being in the 6 link over our Golem. Now the caveat is these cost mana to cast, so we can't life temp them anymore. So what we do is we just don't reserve all of our mana. We leave out like 60 or so that we can just cast these. They do cost 39, so we can't cast them back to back to back, but we don't want to because we have Blessed Rebirth. We don't. They last a minimum of 4 seconds. So by the time we have to cast it again, we will have the mana up. Also, they have a duration of 20 seconds. So as long as they're not dying, they will die, but as long as they're not dying, then um, you can cast them, once or twice, hit your max cap, and then you only have to cast them every once in a while to refresh them. Uh, Next up, Vol Molten Shell, added that to the build. That's what gives us that high EHP. You won't have 100% uptime just because of how Molten Shell is, but you'll have it for the majority of the time, except for a small 4 second window. And then after the window is ended, you can recast it. Just put it on your left click, run around, you don't have to think about it. Then finally, we get Punishment. So Punishment is what I was talking about. What it does is once your opponent is once the enemy is below half life, you do 50%. They take 50% increased damage. You don't do 50% increased damage. They take it, which is a more multiplier. So you definitely want this ability. It also debilitates them, which slows them down and then causes them to do less damage. And then because we scale that curse effect like before, like with temp chains, once the enemy's on low life, you end up doing 6.1 million DPS. And then this is against Guardian and Pinnacle bosses. So that's a significant jump up, right? The reason why punishment is so good on those bosses is usually because those phase 3, like the phase 3 of a fight, is going to be the hardest. It's when the boss is doing its most damage, the most abilities. It's moving quickly. The arena changes shape, like it shrinks. There's stuff on the ground. So by applying punishment, you're ending the fight faster. Um, so that is something to consider. And then finally, let's go over the gear really quickly. So in order to get block cap, it's not conditional. As you see, we don't have a Rumis anymore. The way we get that is through a shield. The way you craft this is just pristine fossils until you get recover life on block. And then hopefully you also get chance to block. If you don't, you just have to keep going until you get chance to block. But once you do, then you'll be block capped unconditionally. You don't have to worry about it. And then ideally, best case scenario, you also get life as one of your prefixes, and then you can just finish the craft with holding with the resistance that you need. If not, if you fill your suffixes up, then you would just bench craft life. Our chest, we smashed together a warlord and a hunter chest. So the warlord, we're looking for increased offerings, increased effective offerings, and then we want to smash that together with a warlord that gives us endurance charge when we get hit. This is what allows us to get our endurance charges. We're constantly going to be getting hit. We don't mind getting hit because we regen so much, or sorry, we recover so much that getting hit is actually a benefit. And then we finish the craft off with prefixes cannot be or suffixes cannot be changed, and then reforge for life until we get percent life, and then a flat life roll. What else? What else? The bone ring. So unfortunately, there's no real way around it, and actually we'll backtrack and talk about the helmet. But the bone ring, there's no real way around it. You kind of need to buy a fractured bone ring. Thankfully, if you get a bad fracture, well, quote unquote bad fracture, they're very cheap. A lot of people go after the like the tier one best of the best bone ring, and you really don't need that, right? Like the difference between 6% increased attack speed isn't that much, or the difference between 11% and like 16% isn't actually that much. So you can get away with this. The way you craft this is you use a deafening essence of either an attribute or a resistance until you get another T1 suffix. And then you do, sorry, you keep going until you get a T1 and then a good life roll, or you get a T2 and then an okay life roll. However you want to go. As many deafenings as you can use. If not, use shriekings until you get a decent enough suffix and prefix. Then finish it off with the benchcraft of mana cost reduction. Belt, same thing. You just want to craft this with deafening essences. You want to quality it up with resistance, and then craft with deafening essences of envy, so you get that chaos res. And then once you get either two T1 resistances, then you can bench craft life. If you get a really high life roll, then you can finish off by bench crafting a resistance. You want to do resistances on your belt because this is where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. You don't really want to do, a mix of resistances and attributes. You want a quality one and then go for that one. And then finally, let's talk about the helmet. So the helmet, there's not really a way around this. It is going to be expensive. You have to invest somewhere, and that somewhere is going to be your helmet. So buy a fractured helmet. It doesn't have to be on a nightmare bassinet. You can buy it on a lower tier base, but you do need that fractured +1. The way you're going to craft this is with deafening essences of loathing. Yes, loathing. Those are going to be expensive, but it's going to give you that 10% mana reservation. Keep doing that until you get a T1 resistance or two T2s, a T1 or T3, whatever you get. Then once you finish your suffixes, you're going to go ahead and craft prefixes cannot be, or suffixes cannot be changed, reforge for life, or you can do suffixes cannot be changed and then just use a veiled chaos orb and unveil the +1 to raise zombies and raise skeletons. At which point, then you can benchcraft life. Additionally, if you do reforge for life, you can benchcraft +1 raise zombies and raise skeletons, or if you do both and you get life and the unveil, then you can finish the craft off by bench crafting whatever resistance or attribute that you still need on your helmet. So you're also going to repeat this process with a +2 once you can afford it, and that's going to be in the end game build. And then finally, you finish it off with the Icarus. So you really just want the meta reservation of skills. And then if you have any Syrian Exarch around, just throw it at it until you get effective Despair Curse. And that is it. So that's a quick run through. Those are the changes that we made. Again, we keep our physical damage reduction. Our spell suppression is conditional. We have to be phasing, but because we have 100% uptime on our flasks, also these are the two flasks that we use. Rock Gut for the movement speed and the onslaught, and then the Quartz Flask for phasing. Because we have 100% on these at all times, we're always phasing. So, you know, we do get a big chunk of spell suppression, but in order to cap it, you need to make sure that you have 70% on the rest of your gear combined. So it is a big ask, as well as the jewel. It is a big ask, but if you can get that, then you get 100%. So that's something to consider. We are block cap. We do have 90% physical damage reduction, but some of that is coming from our the armor that we get from the flask as well as determination. So it's not, you know, actually 100%, or it's not actually 90%, but it's really high. That's good enough. Cap res, you can get chaos res if you get lucky on your crafts and you just have open suffixes and you can just craft chaos on there. Really good movement speed, 100%. That's nice. Also keep in mind that this is on top of shield charging around. So you're going to be zipping around. And then 4.2 million DPS with our skeletons up. If you're going pack to pack, if we disable those skeletons, if you're going pack to pack, you do 1.6 mil. It's like you're clear, which is okay for like white, blues, and reds, or white, blues, white mobs, magic mobs, and rare mobs. If you're fighting anything like essences or rogue exiles, you then want to stop and summon your skeletons. And if you're fighting, obviously, the boss. But other than that, it's pretty good to go. Thank you, everyone, for the support. Thank you for the help. I very much so look forward to 3.21. This is just like the bare bones version of this build. Once we get those minion wands and see what they're capable of, then we might, well, obviously, well, I don't want to say obviously, because GG has a funny way with minions. We should be able to do more damage than this, and also be tankier and move faster. So super excited for 3.21. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments. If you have anything that I missed, then go ahead and leave that in the comments as well. And other than that, I'll be out.